If you are an artist who finds it difficult to commit to a daily practice of anything forever, then this interview might be for you. My conversation is with Helen Hiebert, who advocates for what she calls a daily intermittent practice. It's really a fascinating concept and it makes a lot of sense. I think you'll enjoy this conversation with Helen. Hi, Helen. Welcome back to the Art Biz.
Thank you, Alyson. It's great to be here.
I would be remiss in letting people think that I haven't seen you since 2018. I am grateful that I get to see you from time to time, if only on Zoom.
Yeah.
The last time you were on here was 2018. It was episode 18, and we talked about your multiple streams of income, which is an episode that I continue to refer people to. 6 years
Oh,
ago, some 6+ years ago. And I just continue to refer people to it. It's such a good episode. But I just want to recap what we talked about. We talked about your 5 income streams at the time, art installations being 10% of your income, artist books being 30 to 35% of your income, teaching for hire in your studio and online was 30%. You had I'm looking at numbers right now. 12 months of paper calendar, how-to books, and class kits were 20%, and sponsorships 5%. So because this is the Art Biz and we love to talk about this, let's talk about how that's changed in the last, I'm going to say 7 years now.
yeah. Well, what I decided to do was just to look at 2024 to date because we're almost at the end of the year.
At this
So,
recording. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, because every year is different, right? So, I have done art installations over the past 6 or 7 years, but I've done two. So the income was just in two of those years. So I hope it's okay to just talk about a 1 year snapshot
Yeah.
because instead of art installations, I had an international tour this past year where I took a group to Japan, a Japan paper tour, and that was 25% of my income. Now, of course, there were quite a few expenses that went against that. And then my artist books and product sales, because I sell paper in addition to artist books from time to time, was 14%. Teaching, now my teaching online has skyrocketed because of the pandemic was during that time. So, and I also teach 3 times a year in my studio in person, 2 master classes, papermaking master classes, and 1 retreat. So, and then I occasionally am teaching for hire, not as much anymore though. So that's 54%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then sponsorships was 3%. And then I added a new one, advances and royalties, because I took a long hiatus from writing how-to books, but now I'm doing it again. So that was 4%.
Okay. And you're lumping together your online teaching and your in-person teaching as one
Yes.
category. Gotcha.
Yes.
54%.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You lumped it together before, but it has gone up 24%. So thank you for doing those numbers. And what I really wanted to talk to you about, as you know, while you're here, is I wanted to talk to you about daily practice and how you have come to talk about it and think about it, include it in your teaching and your art and your forthcoming book. So where do you want to start with that?
I'll start with moving to Colorado in 2012 because I did a daily practice project shortly after that. So we moved here for my husband's job, and children were in school. My husband had a job, and I had to reinvent myself. I was, I was doing the same thing in Portland, Oregon, but I now live more in a rural community up near Vail and Beaver Creek. So it's kind of in between rural and city. I don't know, it's this weird.
Yeah.
area, right? With people coming and going all the time and the population changing. And in Portland, I had been teaching a lot in person, and that wasn't going to be the case right here. So in 2013, at the end of that year, I, I don't remember where I heard about these 100-day projects because they weren't that prevalent then, but I decided to do a 100-day project for myself. And I chose paper weaving as my project. So I decided I was going to do 100 paper weavings from sometime in September through December 31st. And I was going to use 2 different papers for each weaving because you weave 2 papers together. And so that would be 200 papers that I could learn about. So I did all these things. I asked people to send me papers if they wanted to. I had a newsletter, so I was able to put the word out, "Hey, I'm going to do this project. You can help me." And people sent me like old book pages, and some paper companies sent me paper. So it was a way for me to learn and grow in terms of weaving paper, but also in terms of exploring paper and learning about commercial papers, because at that time I was making paper by hand more. I'd started writing books about using papers to make projects. So dry papers, you don't have to make the paper yourself, but I really wanted to focus on that. And then what I learned by doing it was doing something over daily is you have to let go of a lot of things, and you start anticipating what's going to happen the next day and where you're going to go with your work.
So so it wasn't just like, here's 2 papers weaving together. You really wanted to learn about the papers while you were doing it. That was part of it for you. It wasn't just the finished product, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I would say I learned more about paper weaving than the papers, but
Okay.
having being forced to use different papers each day, I learned, how thick the paper needed to be. Certain papers were too thick, other papers were too thin. It was really tedious to weave them. Yeah, things like that.
Okay.
But the most valuable thing was I started to think about what is a weaving. And paper weaving, I mean, it's been going on since the 1700s. I've taken a deep dive since into paper weaving used in education. And I think I actually did my first paper weaving in elementary school, weaving a placemat. Maybe you did too.
Yeah.
That has
Yeah.
a long history, which is very interesting. But as an art form, it's relatively new. And now today, I don't think in 2013 there were that many people weaving paper, but today if you look on Instagram, there are lots of people doing that. And so you think of paper weaving as strips of paper woven horizontally and vertically. I think that's what most people would think. But when you start doing it,
Because
you realize,
we
okay,
made the placemats.
right, right. Yeah. But you can curve those strips, you can cut them in different ways, and you can do a lot of things that you can't do with weaving fiber on a loom, right? Because you're free in space, you're not attached to a loom. So it's I find it to be a really innovative place.
Yeah. So these lessons that you learned in your 100-day project are primarily, they're technique and material related. Yes.
Yes.
Was there anything so I'm wondering, because I don't think I have a daily practice. I think you and I have talked about this before. I would love to have a daily journaling practice, but I have had intermittent, and I know we're going to get to that, journaling practices. But when you are going through the creative daily practice, are you like that 100-day project? Are you keeping notes on every day, or are you just keeping it all in your head?
It depends. I am not a big note taker Or I write something down like in one place one day, another place the next. So, yeah, I have to say that, around the same time when we moved to Colorado is when I started working with you and learning some basic business techniques because I did not know how to run a business. And so I don't even think I realized I was running a business. I think I had a negative idea of being a
You came
business
out of
owner.
art school.
No, I didn't go to art school. I have discipline tendencies, but I don't in certain areas.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of benefits that I realized that aren't technique and paper based.
Yeah.
Like what really got me going was developing the new skill, right? So here I am doing paper weaving, but I'm developing new and innovative ways to weave paper. And other people have done it. I can't say I'm the first, and then I needed at that point to kickstart my creativity. Like I was kind of in a slump. I was spinning my wheels, not knowing where to go. And so this 100 days really just gave me that discipline and kickstarted my creativity. I had to, figure out how to fit the daily practice into my day because you're going to do something for 100 days, you have to set some parameters and get it done. So I established a routine. It helped me develop creative courage. I think doing something over and over is really, yeah, you get more comfortable and
Confident,
and
confidence.
confident,
Confident,
right?
yeah.
It created momentum. It was a challenge. I love challenges. I love solving puzzles. Paper weaving is like putting puzzles together. I mean, it totally is part of my whole practice, but I love challenges. And then I said, exploring paper in new ways, repetition, like the fact that I was repetitively doing something day after day. I get bored with repetition, right? So I had to come up with a new way. That's why came up with new ways to weave, is because I didn't want to be just doing the same thing over and over. And that's maybe unique to me. It's the same, two people did 100 weaving side by side. One person might be weaving straight strips the whole time and just changing the papers or doing one subtle change. And I'm much more interested in all the ways you can do something. It's meditative. Paper weaving is meditative, so it was kind of like a time to just once I had the idea, the actual process was meditative. Yeah, and it helped me get out of a creative block.
Yeah. Did you have an average time that each daily paper weaving would take?
It varied. I would say the average was an hour. Like I
Okay.
wasn't spending my whole day doing this. But when you do something daily, I was thinking. I think a lot anyways. That's a big part of my practice. It's in my mind. So, I would be thinking about what I was going to do the next day or thinking before I started weaving. And some days was longer, some days were shorter.
Do you work in silence or do you have music on or anything else on?
It just depends.
Yeah.
I do listen to podcasts.
I'm always very curious about that. I did just talk with someone who doesn't do anything without music, and everyone has their own. And when you talk about thinking and meditative process, I always wonder what's in the background. But I also wonder about the time. You said never more than an hour. And I wonder if in a daily practice, because as we're going to get to, you've explored it more since 2013 in a daily practice, do you put a cap on it? Like say, I'm only going to work on this for this long, or do you say, I promise to work on it for this long, but if I want to work on it longer, I can?
I am not like that. I know a lot of people are, and you could set a timer, all these things. I would say I have a short attention span. So I think that hour is, and it was not that it was never more than an hour. Sometimes it did go over an hour. So it just depended on whether I got into it more one day
Got it.
than the other, or whether the paper was harder to weave. Maybe there was a challenge that came up. But yeah, I definitely wasn't going to spend my whole day. This is more of a warm up. It's almost like other things you do in your day,
Did
like exercising or, yeah.
did you start your day with this, or you start like that was the first creative thing you did that day?
Usually,
Yeah.
but you have to give yourself flexibility,
Mhm.
like if I had something at the beginning of one of those 100 days, and I was traveling sometimes throughout those 100 days. So I had to fit sometimes I had to fit it in when I could.
Yeah. Yeah. All of those things that you mentioned seem to me the reasons to do it. I mean,
Mhm.
learning about the technique and developing the skill, I mean, that's all great, but the discipline and
Mhm.
the momentum and I was talking about this recently with someone that the one thing about being an artist or having your own business is there's nobody to tell you what to do and when to do it.
Right.
And this freedom is great on the one hand. On the other hand, it is just there's when you don't have any parameters, it can be just stifling because you don't know which way to go. And this seems to give you some direction.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what happened at this point in my life. If I reflect back, hindsight is 2020, right? In Portland, I had more things going on. My children were younger, but when I moved here, they were in school all day. I had a lot more time to focus on my business, and I started really doing that. And I also needed to make a living. So it all
Okay.
wrapped into the next 12 years, which here we are.
So, what happened after that? What did you do with the daily practice after you did the 100 days? Actually, wait a minute. Put a pin in that. Before we get to that, what was your practice like after the 100 days?
You know, I can't remember. So I will say that's about the time I had done some blogging. I remember I did a blog around my Mother Treat project, which was in 2010, but I didn't blog regularly. Well, I think for that I blogged daily perhaps, but that was for 1 month. And so I
Another
think
intermittent daily
yes,
practice.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I started writing a blog once a week, and during that 100 days, I'm pretty sure I blogged, I don't know if it was daily, but a few times a week, and I was, updating people on what I was working on, the weavings of the week, that kind of thing. And then, yeah. So that was a business component. And I was going to the studio. I mean, I go to the studio 3 days a week now, and I spend 2 days a week in my home office. So that's probably when that happened, about then.
Mhm. After
Yeah,
the 100 days, you do feel like it jump started things for you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you do with the daily practice after that? How did it infiltrate your other work or your teaching or however you want to take that?
Well, I'm going to take it specifically to paper weaving because I started teaching online, I think in 2017, and I hadn't really done paper weaving for a few years because that was 2013, and I was trying to think of classes I could teach. My first one was related to one of my books, Paper Illuminated, so different ways to illuminate paper and make structures that enhance paper with light. And then I thought about paper weaving and how much I had learned and the daily practice component. So I decided to do a 30-day weaving class. So, kind of a shortened 100-day project. I made it a 30-day class. And the first time I ran it was 2019. And so I incorporated this idea of let's weave together for 30 days. We're going to post what we weave each day in an online classroom. And so, in addition to each person doing it themselves, they could jump into the classroom and see what everyone else was doing. That's a really interesting way of holding yourself accountable because you know you're supposed to post every day and you can see what other people are doing and how they approached it. And so this class I've done it'll be the 7th year. I do it in February every year. It's also like a jumpstart the new year. The first year I did it in January. I've now moved it to February. So yeah, that's where I took it. And, I got lots of interest. And so I did it again and I'm doing it again. And somewhere along the way, I started adding daily prompts. So, like, you can weave to a word. Some people like that, some people don't. Like garden. It's very open prompts that,
Yeah.
how would you weave a garden? Or do you weave garden colors? It's not like you have to do this. This is something I like about teaching it, and probably why I still am doing it is that it's so versatile and open-ended. A lot of the other projects I teach are very step by step. Like we're all going to make this lamp or this lantern. It's going to look the same. We can all do it with different papers, but weaving is just more freeform.
It doesn't have to be. It just happens to be that that's the way you teach it,
True. I
which
could be
is,
teaching, yeah,
yes.
everybody cut up these 5
Yes.
strips and these 4 strips and weave them together. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Do you find that people do the work every day and post every day? Or do you find that there is, as I have found in online classes, that there's oh, we're really excited this first week, and then there's this like lull after that, or it goes down?
Oh, for sure. And thankfully, I already had the experience of teaching online prior to starting the class. I'm going to say 20% participate
Yeah.
daily. I have about 100 students, so maybe 30%. So there are definitely people who do it every day and really enjoy that. There are people, because it's online, I really don't know. There are probably people that never even get started, right?
Right.
And then there are a lot of people that pop in and out. Mhm.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
there are people also that sign up year after year. So I do have that with this class where I know they're like, or they missed a year and they miss it,
Yeah.
so there is something powerful happening.
And it's not like they can sign up in July for it. They have
Right.
to sign up. It's only open at certain times.
Yep.
So you said it's probably why you're still teaching it. And you did mention the repetitive nature of weaving was meditative and so forth, but that you get bored really easily. So, how do you find doing the same class year after year? You said you add some prompts, but how do you keep it interesting to you?
Yeah, well, you know what? The first 2 years, I didn't participate in the class. I was just the instructor and I was looking what everyone did and commenting. And then I was like, gosh, why am I not doing this with them? So now I participate. And this is what I call the intermittent daily practice because I am doing this for 30 days in February. To me, that is manageable and it's a challenge and it's exciting. It's a new group of people. Maybe I've purchased different papers throughout the year, or maybe I come up with some other parameters for myself. So there's something about doing it again and again that I love. And yeah, I'm looking forward to next February. It's coming right up. And
But you're not teaching the same way every time. You're because you're participating, you're adjusting things a little bit, I think.
yeah, well, it's an interesting thing to think about as an instructor because it's really different than anything else I teach. I have 4 main videos that I release at the beginning of each of the 4 weeks, and they cover the techniques, right? And I'm redoing them this year for the first time. And I've thought about, of course, over 7 years, some things need to change. And I updated some of the videos in between, but they're all brand new this year. So beginners, because I have beginners and advanced people who are coming back, right? So the beginners really should watch those 4 videos. And I have a daily prompt in the classroom each day where I share a few more nuggets. It's really interesting. I haven't even I don't know, formulated all the ideas around teaching that happen. It's exciting. The teaching part is exciting because I feel like it's innovative as well. I have 4 weekly Zooms, so I'm thinking about, well, what am I going to share on Zoom? Oh, I learned this new cool thing. I found this thing from the 1700s, or, there's so many ways to be creative within this class.
So again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you have a structure, and then
Yes.
you remain true to that structure, or in a business terms, we call it a system, but a structure, and then you allow yourself the freedom to innovate within that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's confidence behind that too. I have taught this so many times. I know how to weave paper. And so I'm able to just think about how can I bring new things in? How can I challenge students who've done this a lot and entice or not overwhelm people who are coming for the first time?
Yeah. What do you want your students to get from the class? All those things that you mentioned previously?
Yeah. I think being creative it's like as important as waking up each day. So I hope that people get excited, learn about papers, just enjoy doing something daily.
What do you think gets in the way of them doing that? And this to me this is also related to my teaching a little bit,
Mhm.
because I really want artists to understand that if they are trying to sell their work, promote their work, show their work, that it is a daily practice as well. And and so I'm just curious. I'm always curious about those 70% of the people that we don't hear from, that kind of drop off, that pay good money, and then, maybe they'll use it later. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think happens to them?
I don't
Let's
know.
you and me talk.
I'm happy to hear you say that you don't know because I don't know either. I mean, I do hear from people. I heard from someone this week because I run a membership program too that is a monthly project. It's renewal time. Annual memberships are they're gonna be billed, so I don't wanna, like, bill someone who doesn't wanna be billed, and so I reach out and send an email to everyone, and so I heard from someone who said, "I've learned so much from you," and she's not someone who participates.
Yeah.
Um, but I have some
But did she
tips.
renew? That's what I wanna know.
Yes, she's renewing,
Okay.
yes. Oh, and other people are like, "I haven't had time. I can't do it. I love what you do." I mean
Yes.
I mean, you know,
I get that too.
they
Yes,
support
yes.
what I do, but they don't stick to it, and yeah, maybe we need to survey them. But there's just so many things that people are interested in, and
Exactly.
you only have so many hours in the day, and I set my own, "Oh, I'm gonna do this challenge of 30 things with someone during December," and I did 2, and then I stopped. So, yeah, I don't know what it is, right place, right time. But I do have some tips that I've collected for sticking to a daily practice.
Oh, good. Let's hear those. How many are there? So that I know.
Uh, I think 10.
Oh, wow. Okay, let's go.
But
Let's
we
go
can
10.
go quick.
We'll see. I might have questions.
So I'm working on this book about it's about paper weaving, and the book is formulated after my class. So this is kind of interesting, right? So I did this 100-day project myself. I developed it into this 30-day class, and now I'm writing this book. And so,
There's a lesson in there somewhere for
yeah,
y'all. Yeah. Leverage, leverage, leverage. There you go.
yeah. So the first one is just setting a goal, which could just be to weave for 30 days, right? The second one is to set some parameters because you can't just be all over the place. That can take up time, right? So I'm pretty good at managing my time, but that's hard for people, I think, at the first. So, like, maybe you make your weavings all the same size, or you take your papers all from this stack that you have collected, or from a book. I've had people just weave into the pages of a book.
Itself is a parameter. I mean, that's just
Yeah,
like really limiting yourself. But then within that, all the different kinds of paper that you
right,
could use, and then the size and everything. And then we
yeah,
talked about previously the time.
right.
The time. Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
setting the time. I think that's another one. Yeah,
Okay.
establishing a routine.
Yeah.
So, like, are you gonna weave first thing every day? Or do you
Uh-huh.
like to weave to wind down at the end of the day? Or are you just gonna fit it in when you can? So, for me, just trying to fit it in when I can, that doesn't work except for on certain days. I like to do it at a set time. Also, focusing on process over product, like,
Yes.
just
Yes.
weave. Just get those strips of paper and
Yes.
throw them on your table and see what happens. That is, and using your hands is so much you get out of your brain. I'm like so guilty of this myself. I try to think through the whole weaving in my head, but it's not the same as weaving with your hands. Something happens or you mess up and you make a discovery.
I'm
So
so
much
glad
power in
that
that.
you said that because I try to stress that in whatever we do, like focus on the journey is what I say
Yes.
in art business terms, but I've heard so many artists say how important it is to be present for the making part of it rather than thinking about what they're going to do with it at the end or how it's going to look at the end, but really just being present. Yeah. Good, good, good. I love that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought the word journey up because I wanted the title for the book to be A Paper Weaving Journey because you learn a lot about yourself from doing a daily practice. You learn about paper, you learn about weaving. The publisher, I can't remember the title they're thinking of right now, but I think the word journey isn't going to be in there.
But you, but what you just said, you learn about paper, you learn about weaving, you learn that things take time and develop over time, and that's journey.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it will be called A Paper Weaving Journey within the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for paper weaving, creating a dedicated workspace can be helpful because you have all these strips of
It's so
paper
many
and maybe you pulled
papers.
out all your papers. So I have people in my class, I've learned so much from them, just like, oh, well, they just have a box and they put everything in their box at the end of the day and shove it under their bed. So because they're working on their dining room table, maybe, so it depends. If you have a whole studio, yeah, maybe you
That's
have the luxury of space, but if you don't, you gotta, like, figure out how to make it work. There are these practical issues, yeah, that
yeah.
can keep you from getting started.
Helen, have bought paper from you in the past, your handmade paper, and it's in a box with all my other papers. And when I want to make something, the box comes out. But I do wish that it could be out all the time because that would be fun. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Keep going.
Um, well, finding community and accountability, like,
Yeah.
you know this and talk about it all the time, but, for me making art, I'm just alone in my studio, it can be lonely. So when I did that first 100 days blogging about it, I got some interaction. People were like, "Oh, cool paper. What paper did you use?" Or, I actually sold those weavings. That was encouraging. So whatever way you find community. My class is a community.
Hmm.
And then accountability, like you need to figure out, okay, are you going to post in the classroom every day? That's all I'm telling you to do. um, and maybe look for a few minutes at what other people have made. Or maybe you do it together with someone and you share with each other. That community piece is huge. And you can just, yeah, for accountability, you could just do the 30 weavings, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just do the work.
Actually do them. You
Uh,
could also use social media and say, yeah, start. I'm going to be posting 30 days, even in your
yeah.
stories, or it doesn't have to be in your feed. You could do that. I know Janice McDonald does that with her daily collage practice. So,
Yeah. And I actually have a story about Janice in my book because she talks about that. She does collage daily and it's more about the process than the product with those daily collages, but she has a whole practice outside of that, making work. And sometimes those little tidbits lead to something. And she posts on Instagram and she was featured in the London Times. I mean, all these things happen when you first just do the work. You have to make the work, right? And then if you start talking about it and sharing it, there's things that will happen that you can't even imagine because people are looking at your work online. Just a couple more. One more maybe is to let go of perfection. And this is something I learned quickly with those first 100 weavings. Like, I'm not going to like all of them. If I'm doing them every single day, they're not all going to be perfect. They're not all going to be my favorites. So, but the process of doing them, I feel like I get something out of every day. And that's where I wish I wrote notes. And over all these years, like all these things are coming into my book now, right? Instead of my daily note taking. There are things that I realize over and over because I have students each year that bring up the same pain points and discoveries. And yeah,
yeah. Did we hit them all?
yeah, that was
Oh,
basically.
wow. So I think it's important just to kind of put a bow on things, to articulate the value that you see in an intermittent practice versus a daily practice. Like, I'm going to do this every day for the rest of my life practice.
Yeah, I think I can only speak to what I'm doing, and this has just kind of evolved, right? So now every February, I'm doing this intermittent 30 days. And I don't know if I would do it myself. It has to do with the class, right? So now people are anticipating it, and so I anticipate it as well. But I think it does speak to I've been reflecting. I'm coming up on a big birthday this next year, and you kind of reflect back on your life. And just like staying with things, whether it's 30 days every year or it's every day or whatever it is, there are big things that are a result of that, and
Yeah. I mean, this is why there are so many 30-day challenges out there. That's
mhm,
not what you're calling it, but it is, there's a
yeah,
reason for that. And that is the jumpstart,
right,
and just the commitment to,
right.
to show up for something, I think is what is so valuable. And anyone, even though 70% of people we're talking about can do something for 30 days. It's
Yes,
if you really want to.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
That's
think it is hard, all the other pieces that go into that, because I don't think someone signing up for 30 days thinks ahead to all of the parts and pieces. So,
yeah.
like,
Well, what the
okay, an hour a day, all the commitments. Yeah. What it
yeah.
actually looks like. It's hard to understand what it looks like until you're in it. And maybe that's why people who do come back year after year, they see the first year, if they even get started, right? And then they realize all the benefits, so they come back.
Yeah. Well, that's one reason why in my planning workshops I have people add up all the hours on their
Mhm.
calendar and really see. I don't believe anyone has time. I believe people make time for
Yes,
what's
I agree.
important. And so I don't ever ask people, where do you have time for this? Where are you going to make the time for this? And that in itself is a like, oh, I don't know if I can, it's a
Right?
real eye opener. So if you're going to do a 30-day challenge for yourself, make sure you make the time for it, or like you feel bad. Those 70% of the people probably feel bad that they spent money on it, that they wanted to do it, like their heart wants to do it, but not enough to make time for it.
Yeah, and I think you're just making me think of I have a video, like a sales page with a video, and I say, I I hope you'll commit to 1 to 2 hours a day. And who knows? Do they watch the video? Do they internalize that? There's so many
Yeah.
layers to something really sinking in
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
becoming concrete rather than abstract.
I
Yeah.
just hate for people to feel bad.
Yeah.
I want people to do their best, and if they get even a little bit out of it, I think that's great. But don't give up on something totally because you missed a day or two or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and people have lifelong access to my classroom. So I
Yeah.
create a new classroom every year. So, um, they can for Weep Through Winter, they can go back and watch the videos anytime if they don't have time. So if just there to learn the technique, that's one part. And then if they wanna do the daily practice, they can do that.
Yeah.
And of course, with my book, you know, I have structured the book for 30 days of weaving, but you can do them at any pace. It's 30 projects, right? It's interesting to look at it within the lens of the daily practice and then beyond.
It's called Weave Through Winter, which would be summer for people in the Southern Hemisphere. But it makes sense because you're in the mountains and you gotta do something there with all that snow, and that is coming up in February. Where can people find that?
Just go to my website, helenhiebertstudio.com, and there's classes are listed there, and you'll find the link for Weave Through Winter.
Got it, and then your book comes out.
If everything goes as planned, it should be out next November of 2025.
I'm laughing because does anything ever go as planned like that? I want that plan. Okay, that would be great. We're looking forward to that, and then how can people follow you on Instagram?
I'm at Helen Hiebert, and Hiebert is Hiebert.
Helen, thank you so much. I think a daily practice is great for all those reasons that you mentioned. And I am envious of your students. I can't commit to the daily practice, but I know they're going to get a lot out of it.
Thanks, Alyson.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Helen Hiebert. If you would ever rather listen than watch the Art Biz, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. I always appreciate it if you would rate the show there as well. Helen gave you her links there at the end of the podcast, and I will put them in the show notes below, the description below. And I just want to remind you that if you are an artist who is looking to grow your business, you're looking for support, you're looking for community, you're looking for accountability, you're looking for strategies and tactics, then I have all of that for you in my Essentials for Artist Success program. I hope you'll take a look at it. It's at artbizsuccess.com/essentials. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.